Gloria adjusted the stiff, faded maid's uniform and tied her apron tighter as she entered the grand estate's ballroom. The mansion glittered with golden chandeliers, marble floors, and the kind of luxury she had only ever touched when scrubbing it. That night, wealthy guests filled the space, men in tuxedos, women in sparkling gowns. They laughed, clinked champagne glasses, and glanced at her only when they needed something. But Gloria noticed something else. Their eyes lingered longer than usual. Not with kindness, but with contempt. One woman sneered, "Look at her shoes, they're falling apart. Can't the staff afford better?" Another man whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I've seen street sweepers dress better than that." The laughter echoed across the ballroom, each chuckle slicing deeper into Gloria's pride. She lowered her head, forced a polite smile, and carried on serving. No one knew the truth. By morning, they would, because by morning, Gloria would not return in the maid's uniform. She would walk into the mansion not as a servant, but as its owner. Gloria had been working as a maid in the wealthy Harrington estate for 3 years. Her shift stretched into the early hours, scrubbing, polishing, serving, and always disappearing into the background. The Harrington family had inherited wealth from generations past. They flaunted it with parties, expensive cars, and their circle of equally arrogant friends. For them, Gloria was invisible until something went wrong. Then the blame was hers. She endured insults quietly. But that night was different. It was Mrs. Harrington's grand birthday celebration. Guests packed the mansion, dancing and laughing while Gloria moved silently between them with trays of champagne. She had barely finished serving one group before another began mocking her again. Her hands are too rough for serving wine. Look how nervous she looks, probably afraid she'll steal something. She doesn't belong here. She never will. Their words stuck to her skin like oil. She wanted to cry, but she held her head low and whispered to herself, "Just tonight. One more night. Then everything changes." The guests didn't know Gloria's full story. Years ago, before becoming a maid, Gloria's grandmother had worked as a cook for the Harringtons. She had been kind, diligent, and loved by all the staff. But what no one knew, not even the Harringtons, was that Gloria's grandmother had been left a hidden share of the estate's land in a quiet deal with the patriarch, Mr. Richard Harrington. The documents had been locked away for decades. They resurfaced only recently, when Gloria's grandmother passed away and left them to her. Gloria spent weeks with lawyers confirming the papers. And then the truth unraveled. The Harrington mansion itself sat on property that legally belonged to her family. She hadn't spoken of it to anyone. Not the guests, not the Harringtons, not even her co-workers. She kept working quietly, serving drinks, enduring humiliation, because she knew her moment would come, and it would come soon. The night dragged on. Laughter, music, champagne. At one point, Gloria tripped slightly when a drunken guest stepped into her path. A glass shattered. The room fell silent for a moment before erupting into cruel laughter. Mrs. Harrington's sharp voice cut through the air. "Clumsy girl, you're lucky we don't fire you right here." Gloria bent down to pick up the glass, cheeks burning. She wanted to scream the truth. "This isn't your house to insult me in," but she stayed silent. For now. The next morning, the Harringtons gathered in the drawing room, bleary-eyed from the party. Their lawyers were there too, waiting. Gloria walked in, not in a maid's uniform, but in a tailored black dress. Her hair was neatly styled, her posture tall, her eyes sharp. Mrs. Harrington frowned. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be cleaning up last night's mess." But Gloria didn't carry a mop or a tray. She carried a folder, and inside that folder were the ownership documents. The lawyer stood and cleared his throat. "There's been a change. Effective immediately, this property, including the mansion and its estate, is under the rightful ownership of Miss Gloria Matthews." Gasps filled the room. The Harringtons froze. Guests who had mocked her hours earlier sat stunned. Gloria's lips curved into a quiet smile. "I told myself last night would be the last time I wore the uniform, and it was..." The Harringtons tried to argue, shouting, demanding answers. But the documents were clear, signed, sealed, and legally binding. The staff whispered in disbelief. The guests who had laughed at her shame now stared in awe and guilt. The same woman who had mocked Gloria's shoes muttered, She's the owner? And Gloria, standing firm, finally raised her voice. Yes, the maid you mocked, the woman you dismissed, the one you thought invisible. This is my house now. Over the following weeks, the Harrington name faded. The mansion was restored, but this time, it wasn't just a place for empty parties. Gloria opened it to community events, charity galas, and programs to help underprivileged families. The people who once mocked her now came seeking her respect. But Gloria never forgot the humiliation. She carried it not as bitterness, but as fuel, because she knew sometimes life makes you bow, so that when you finally rise, no one can ignore you. Gloria's story spread far beyond the mansion walls. Newspapers called her the maid who became the mistress. When asked what drove her, Gloria said, They laughed at me for being a maid. But humility isn't weakness. What matters is who you are when the laughter fades. Dignity will always outlast arrogance. Backhand index pointing right. And just like Gloria, never let the world define you by where you start. Because sometimes the one mocked in rags will rise to own the palace.